calling, is one thing. What other things can moms do during this time to help that athlete get through?
I'm going to say this, and this might sound strange, but just be a mom.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Moms in the Zone. Today's guest is Dr. Herb Martin. He is the sports psychologist consultant and team clinician for the LA Chargers. Welcome to Moms in the Zone, Dr. Martin.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you for being a guest. We're going to get right to it. We're so excited about having you on the show today. The first thing that we want to ask you is tell our viewers a little bit about Dr. Herb Martin. What is your history?
Actually, the first thing I would say is that my history is long. Well, I'll make it really brief. For the past 25 years, I've worked in professional sport, primarily with NFL players and NBA players. I also work with collegiate players as well to help them maximize their performance. And what that means specifically is that the work that I do is designed to address things that might get in the way for players. I work with players that might have difficulty at home, might have difficulty adjusting to being with a new team or in a new environment, helping them to manage coaches, but moreover, managing the game within the game, which is a term that I've coined to describe all of the nuances that are specific to sport. And so a lot of my work is really designed around helping them to make those adjustments. I also work with mothers and fathers and families to help them to understand the intersection and the interrelationship between how they raise their kids and also how their kids are adjusting through this process.
And I think one of the questions out the gate, being in the times that we're in with COVID-19, all that's going on in the country, what challenges have you seen athletes in general, whether that be, high school, collegiate, pro? What have been some of the challenges during this time that you've witnessed?
Yeah. To simplify matters, my experience has been that everything is amplified. Everything is intensified times 10.
Yes.
So if someone's having difficulty in their relationships with their girlfriends, for example, that is magnified because of all of the stress associated with, the pressure of adjusting to being in a team where you have to test on a daily basis. Not being able to work out as frequently, more pressures from families, worrying about their family members. So I think just in general, that has resulted in a lot of anxiety for players and for certainly all of us. I think coaches experience it, parents experience it, and certainly the players experience it. These are unprecedented times. I just see a magnification of everything that would normally happen. And as a result of that, I've seen that many players withdraw, they isolate, they find themselves not talking as much, not being as gregarious sometimes as they might have been.
That leads to another question. You mentioned the word isolate. I mean, that is huge, especially when you have high school and college, students. Maybe this is their first time, ever being isolated really from their friends as far as high school students. And then college students being isolated from their families, not being able to travel, restrictions with that. What are the things that you've seen them struggle with during this isolation period of, not being able to do what they would normally be able to do?
I think I've seen more anxiety and depression. I mean, to be frank, I think, what do I do with my time? This is, for many collegiate players, this is the time to really connect, be with their friends, and then having the world, having their school say, hey, look, I can't connect during this time. So there's really this push-pull dynamic where I really want to get out, I really want to do things, but the restrictions say that you can't. And I think that's really challenging for a lot of guys.
What are some opportunities to take advantage of this time? What are some ways they can do self-reflection? Maybe they have this time and think, maybe I need to read that book so what are some things that they could flip it and make it a positive? How can they do something?
That's an excellent point. Just simply that. So a lot of the players that I'm working with now, I give them a reading list, some very specific books, that are designed to address there's psychology books, there's motivational books, there's Tony Robbins. There's a whole bunch of things that I will have players explore, and then we'll discuss them. And so that's something that you as parents, as mothers, can do. One of the things I really try to do is to get guys to move away from social media. That's just my own bias. They do that, they will do that, but I want them to expand not only their relationships, but their mind, and this is a great opportunity to do that. I've recommended meditation, apps. We actually had a person that did meditation with us, and so those kinds of things are really, really important. Other thing that I really encourage them to do is to maintain their relationships with their parents, to really use this time to both make contact with their parents, their mothers, to not only assure their parents that they're okay, but that there's a reciprocal thing that happens where the guys will feel a lot more comfort as well. That's where you guys can be more intentional about calling your sons, and I know you want to do that. And a lot of times when they go away, maybe even sometimes several calls during the day is not unusual and certainly wouldn't be unwarranted.
So on top of that, calling, is one thing. What other things can moms do during this time to help that athlete get through?
I'm going to say this, and this might sound strange, but just be a mom and be a mom. And I know that a lot of guys are individuating. In other words, I'm a man separating right during this time, but be that mom. Do what you do. Show them that love. And so some players, some guys will kind of resist that and say, oh, mom, but be that mom, because that's extremely important during this time of uncertainty. One of the things that we all face, and it is very difficult for all of us, is dealing with the unknown. But knowing your voice, hearing your voice, experiencing your voice, experiencing the love, the kindness, the interest, and love, I think can be really stabilizing for a lot of the guys.
And I know for me, if I don't have a chance to talk to my son, I do this. I'll call him I'll put his nickname, and then I'll put the emoji like kiss. And I'll just do it throughout the day. And he's like, Mom, when you do that, he says, I know you're thinking about me. So I don't even talk to him, but I'll just text him that. So he's like, oh, I called that mom at noon. You must have been thinking about me. I'm like, yeah, I was.
Andrea, those kinds of things are things that you do so naturally. And I think the things that are natural, the things that we normally do, is what is so important, to sort of normalize the experience during this time where it is so much uncertainty. So, we could tell you all kind of fancy things to do, but I just do what you do, but do it times 10.
Then the question is, you mentioned earlier, depression. I know one of the things that we've been intentional about on Moms in the Zone is, talking about mental health. During this time, like you stated, isolation, the challenges that they're facing. What can an athlete do to kind of to keep from getting depressed, or to keep from getting overwhelmed with anxiety or panic attacks and things of that nature? Because this is just, an unprecedented time for them, for all of us. So what can they do to just keep the depression away?
Well, I think the first thing is to be aware of differences in their behavior. And this is where your involvement with them can be very important. So I would Zoom, or FaceTime my kids, because a lot of times we're not aware of, what's going on with us. And so when you begin to see a decline in X behavior, atypical behavior, talking to your son. So for example, I might say as a father to my son or daughter, hey man, you just don't seem like yourself, man. What are you doing? You hanging out with Randy? You hanging out with, no, well, what are you doing? And if you get a continuation or pattern that continues, then I would highly recommend that they speak to their mental health counselor, or, a coach even, or position coach. And if you begin to see these behaviors continue, then you can have concurrent validity. In other words, you can have someone that looks at them while you're looking and talking to your son, and then raising the question, how are you doing? How are you feeling? That doesn't seem like you. I'm going to get on that plane, that kind of thing. And mean it, and I know it's tough for some people to be able to do that, but I think providing that assurance is really, really important. So to answer your question, I think Self-awareness is something that I think departments at college and program administrators certainly want to do, but it's sometimes difficult because this virus has just been so pervasive. It's hard to track kids. So I think it's important as parents to really make sure that we look at all nuanced changes in their behavior.